in a world obsessed with authenticity, kindness, and playing fair. Why do the most ruthless people keep rising to the top? Why do nice guys finish last while manipulators sit on thrones? The answer is simple. You're still playing the game by the old rules. But today, we resurrect the master of modern manipulation himself, Machiavelli, and we'll uncover how he'd dominate your world using 21 timeless rules of power that most people are too naive to even notice. Power is rarely what it appears to be, and more often than not, it is exactly what it appears to be. Yes, that contradiction is the first lesson. Today, people still believe power comes from credentials, titles, or raw strength. But Machiavelli would laugh at such a naive fantasy. He knew what most people still fail to realize, that power, in its most effective form, is an illusion, a mirage shaped by smoke and light, cultivated in whispers, fed through spectacle. Perception, not truth, is the true sovereign of influence. Now imagine Machiavelli in today's world, a place addicted to optics, obsessed with appearances. Instagram reels, boardroom speeches, LinkedIn humble brags, political theater. This is not a world of substance. It is a theater of power where everyone is performing, and most don't even realize they're on stage. Machiavelli would thrive here. No, he would dominate. He would not need an army. He would not need a crown. He would need a presence. To Machiavelli, your actual strength is secondary. What matters is what others think you're capable of. Are they afraid of you? Do they admire you? Do they talk about you in hushed tones? Uncertain where your influence begins and ends. That uncertainty, that aura, is power. He would master modern perception like a painter with a blank canvas. In the digital world, he would curate every detail. His silence would be calculated. His words, strategic. He would post rarely, but when he did, it would ripple through the ecosystem like a stone dropped into still water, and he'd ensure that stone struck exactly where he wanted. He would never show all his cards. In fact, he would never show most of them. What you don't show is often more powerful than what you reveal. Uncertainty breeds fear. And fear, Machiavelli knew, is far more reliable than love, and yet he would smile. Genuinely, even. He would speak well, dress modestly, appear humble, because the greatest trick of perception is hiding the game. The most dangerous man is the one who appears harmless, the one you think is just like you. But he is not like you. He has studied your instincts, your tells, your fears, your pride. He knows how you want to be seen, and he will give you that version of yourself in exchange for control over your mind. Machiavelli understood that people are addicted to symbols, to labels, to easy interpretations of complex realities. He would use that blindness as his weapon. He would become whatever his environment demanded. The loyal servant, the brilliant advisor, the wounded soul, the visionary leader, the misunderstood outsider. Each role played to perfection, and behind every role, a purpose. He would know that in today's world, credibility isn't earned, it's crafted. 1 million followers, a blue check, a few viral quotes, a stage, a TED Talk. That's all it takes to become an oracle in the eyes of the masses. Machiavelli would use this machinery to sculpt his public myth. He would never beg for attention. Only fools do that. He would make himself scarce, precious. He would allow others to speak his name. He would become the subject of rumors, the architect of narratives, the center of gravity in every room without ever needing to raise his voice. And when it came to rivals, perception would be his scalpel. He would never strike directly. That would make him look cruel. No, he would use suggestion. He would raise a subtle question. Plant a seed of doubt, smile as he watched reputations unravel without a single visible blow. Today, reputations are currency. They rise and fall in seconds. A whisper on a podcast, a misinterpreted clip, a resurfaced comment from 10 years ago. All of it can be used. All of it can be engineered. And Machiavelli would know exactly how to engineer it. He would also know the value of symbols. He'd align himself with powerful imagery. Not just logos and aesthetics, but movements, emotions, causes. He would wear the right cause like a cloak, not because he believes in it, but because you believe in it. You'd see him as one of you. And that's all he needs. He would let you build the altar. Let you project your hopes onto him. Let you worship the idea of him. And when you finally realized he was not what you thought, it would be too late. He would already own your loyalty, your admiration, or your fear. And he would also know this truth doesn't matter unless it is seen. And a lie, repeated enough, becomes the truth. Not in reality, but in consequence. Machiavelli would master reputation not by being honest, but by being strategic. He would let others win moral battles while he won wars. He would protect his image more fiercely than any asset, because he knows, in a perception-driven world, your image is your weapon. He would also be ready to burn it. If a moment ever came where becoming the villain was the only path to victory, he would embrace it, because he knows perception is fluid. Today's villain is tomorrow's legend. The key is surviving long enough to rewrite the story, and while others waste their energy trying to be authentic, he would understand the deeper truth. Authenticity is for the weak. It is a confession of insecurity, a cry for approval. Machiavelli would never ask to be liked. He would make himself respected, and if not respected, feared, but never ignored. Morality is a leash, and most people wear it proudly around their necks, even as it strangles their ambition. Machiavelli understood that the world is not ruled by saints, but by those who learn to pretend to be saints. He knew that morality, for all its beauty in philosophy and poetry, is nothing more than a useful costume in the game of power. And the sooner you realize this, the sooner you stop being food. Because while the masses are taught to do what is right, the elite do what is effective. The rules they preach are not the rules they follow. That is the first secret Machiavelli would whisper in your ear. He would tell you, do not reject morality. That would be foolish. Use it. Cloak yourself in it. Speak of virtue. Post about it. Applaud it in others. Then do what must be done behind the curtain. The people demand righteousness in appearance, not in truth. They want to believe that their leaders, their idols, their lovers are virtuous, not because they truly are, but because the illusion gives comfort. Machiavelli would feed that illusion like a farmer fattens pigs. He would smile warmly, speak of loyalty, preach fairness, quote wisdom, and behind that soft exterior he would make cold calculations. You see, Machiavelli didn't believe humans were good by nature. He believed they were selfish, short-sighted, and easily manipulated by fear, hope, guilt, and pride. But, and here's the brilliance, he never judged them for it. He simply used it. He would never expect people to rise above their impulses. He would expect them to be predictable. And from that predictability, he would build his strategies. He would make himself appear kind when kindness bought him loyalty. He would appear humble when humility softened resistance. He would appear generous when generosity was an investment in power. But none of it would be real, not because he was evil, but because he was strategic. There is a difference. People today confuse moral virtue with tactical advantage. They assume honesty is always right, that forgiveness is always noble, that fairness is always strength. Machiavelli would tear those illusions apart with a single stroke of his quill. He would ask you, what's the point of being honest if it costs you your influence? What's the value of forgiveness if it empowers your enemy to strike again? What's so noble about fairness when the other side is sharpening their knives? Machiavelli would not teach you to be cruel for sport. That's amateurish, sloppy, predictable. No, he would teach you to act with precision, to show mercy only when it deepens control, to betray only when the timing makes it irreversible. He would teach you to use morality as a weapon, not a restraint. In today's world, this tactic is everywhere, though most people are too blind to see it. The smiling CEO who gives to charity while gutting the workforce. The politician who cries on stage while signing away freedoms behind closed doors. The influencer who preaches positivity while sewing private contracts with poison pens. Machiavelli would admire them. Not because they are ethical, but because they understand the show. The show is everything. If people see you as kind, they will trust you. If they trust you, they will follow. If they follow, they are no longer a threat. And if they start to question you, just tighten the mask. Perform a public act of humility. Apologize just enough to look human, never enough to look weak. Machiavelli would also warn you never be the loud moralist. Those who scream about justice the most are often hiding something. The wise player stays quiet, observes, waits. Then, when the moment comes, he acts. He knew that the truly powerful don't need to be right. They only need to be believed. And in the end, belief is bought not with truth, but with performance. He would urge you to master your image. Speak of peace while preparing for war. Speak of equality while building your advantage. Speak of truth, but only when it suits your interests. Morality is theater. He would direct the play. A rigid man is a dead man. Machiavelli knew it centuries ago. The world does not reward the most talented, the most honest, or even the most intelligent. It rewards the most adaptable, the one who can bend without breaking. Who can change shape, like smoke slipping through a keyhole? Who can abandon a former self the moment it no longer serves him? In his time, adaptability meant surviving the whims of merciless princes and shifting alliances. But today, the battlefield has evolved. Now it lives in algorithms, narratives, trends, outrage cycles, and the speed of public opinion. The world reinvents itself daily, and most people, clinging desperately to their fixed identities, are left behind, confused, outdated, irrelevant. But not Machiavelli. He would move like a virus through this world, mutating, learning, shedding skins. When the crowd turns left, he vanishes to the right. When the rules change, he rewrites himself. When the mask no longer works, he crafts a new one before you even notice the first has cracked. Adaptability is not weakness. It is the highest form of intelligence. To change when necessary is not betrayal. It is survival. It is not hypocrisy. It is evolution. Machiavelli would see what others feared, that most people tie themselves to their past, to their image, to a version of themselves that no longer works, because they are afraid to disappear, afraid to let go. But Machiavelli would let go without hesitation. If a new environment punished kindness, he would grow cold. If it rewarded charm, he would become magnetic. If silence became more powerful than speech, he would become a shadow. And if the very structure of the world crumbled, if the old powers fell, if the platforms were burned, if the empires collapsed, he would not mourn, he would adapt. That's why he would survive when others drown. He would observe with surgical patience. He would notice what you don't. The subtle shifts in mood, in language, in posture. The changing tones of the powerful, the words that suddenly disappear from conversation, the jokes that are no longer safe to tell. He would catalog it all, and then he would alter course. He would not waste time being offended by the new rules. He would learn to use them. In a world where weakness is punished in secret, but sympathy is rewarded in public, he would play the wounded genius. In a moment where boldness is trending, he would roar louder than anyone. When the cycle changes, as it always does, he would already be one step ahead, having left his former self like a dead skin on the floor behind him. He would not be loyal to methods, only to results. Most people cling to what used to work, old routines, old strategies, old personas, because they mistake familiarity for strength. But Machiavelli would ask you if your weapons are outdated. Are you still armed? If your identity cannot flex, is it really yours? Or is it your prison? He would not argue with the tides of history. He would learn to sail with them, and when needed, he would plunge beneath the surface and wait, silent, untraceable, until the waters shifted again. In today's world, identity is currency, but it's also a trap. You are told to be yourself. But what if that self is obsolete? What if being yourself is why you're stuck? Machiavelli would not worship identity. He would weaponize it. He would become whoever the moment required. To the knave, that sounds dishonest. To the strategist, it sounds like power. Adaptability is not about lying. It's about evolution with intent. It's about becoming the master of context, knowing when to speak in absolutes and when to disappear into ambiguity, knowing when to dominate and when to play dead, knowing when to show strength and when to offer the illusion of submission. In one city, he would wear a suit and speak of innovation. In another, he would wear silence like armor and listen with predatory calm. He would belong nowhere, and everywhere. You could not pin him down. You could not define him. You could only react to him. And by the time you think you understand him, he is already gone, reinvented, watching you from a new vantage point. He would never announce his changes. He would just arrive different. And by the time you noticed, he would already be in control. There is one thing Machiavelli detested more than incompetence: neutrality. To sit on the fence while two forces clash, to withhold loyalty when the moment demands allegiance, to delay action when boldness is required. He would see all of this for what it truly is: weakness dressed up as wisdom. Because neutrality, despite its clever disguise, is nothing but fear. Fear of losing, fear of choosing wrong, fear of offending, of committing, of taking a side and being held accountable. But in the real world, in the ruthless current of politics, power, and strategy, those who remain neutral are devoured by those who choose a side early and without hesitation. Machiavelli lived in a world where allegiances could shift with the wind, where families murdered each other over alliances, and where silence in a time of decision was treated as betrayal. And still, he knew this. The person who tries to offend no one ends up being useful to no one. Power does not accumulate in the hands of the indecisive. It flows to the bold. He would tell you this in every moment of tension. There are wolves and there are sheep, and those who remain neutral are simply sheep who don't know they've been marked. To choose a side is to gain clarity. To take a stand is to signal strength. And to make an enemy, yes, even that, is to declare yourself a player in the game, not just a spectator. But most people today want to be seen as fair, balanced, reasonable. They walk carefully between arguments. They nod at both sides. They fear making enemies more than they desire making history. Machiavelli would call them cowards. He understood that enemies are not obstacles. They are assets. A visible enemy gives you purpose. It gives you shape. It allows you to draw a line, to rally allies, to forge identity through opposition. When you stand against something, even if you don't say it outright, others will define you by the force of your resistance. In the court of public life, whether in politics, business, culture, or war, the person who refuses to take sides is eventually distrusted by all. He would remind you that the middle ground is not neutral. It is exposed. From the middle, you are flanked. From the middle, you are watched and used, but never respected. And Machiavelli wanted to be feared, respected, remembered, not liked. He understood that being liked is fragile. Being respected is durable. You cannot win the game by avoiding the battlefield. You win it by choosing where you fight and making others regret standing in your way. Neutrality may offer temporary safety, but that safety is an illusion, and illusions are expensive. He would teach you to choose your alliances wisely, and once chosen, to defend them with relentless loyalty. Not because you believe in everything they stand for, but because loyalty, in itself, is a currency of power. It buys you protection. It earns you trust. It tells the world you are decisive, you are reliable, you are dangerous to oppose, and if that alliance breaks, if the tide turns, you do not panic, you pivot, publicly and deliberately. You do not slink away into gray silence. You burn the bridge with controlled fire, and you make your next move obvious. You let the world see where you stand. Because ambiguity is a void, and someone else will fill it before you do. Machiavelli would never allow his loyalty to remain mysterious. He would display it like a weapon. Because when people know where you stand, they adjust themselves around you. That is how a center of gravity is built, not by neutrality, but by presence. He would never tolerate passive players in his circle. To remain neutral is to signal disloyalty waiting to happen. To remain neutral is to gamble your survival on the hope that no one notices you long enough to strike. But in power, invisibility is death. He would rather you be wrong, boldly, loudly, visibly wrong, than sit in the shadows waiting for permission to exist. Because from boldness, there is recovery. From invisibility, there is only decay. He would not beg for consensus. He would force alignment. He would polarize if necessary. Because to polarize is to sharpen your identity. It compels others to make a decision about you. And decision is the first step toward power. You must either draw people in or push them away. Anything in between is noise. He would create loyalty through clarity. He would create enemies through posture. He would never apologize for either, and he would watch as those who tried to float above the fire were eventually dragged down and burned by both sides. Now you see it, don't you? The world hasn't changed, only the tools have. The stage is digital, the masks are sharper, the crowds are louder, but the game remains exactly as Machiavelli described it. Cold, cunning, and unrelenting. He would not be confused by this modern world. He would not be overwhelmed by its noise. He would see straight through it. To the levers behind the curtain, to the weakness behind the virtue, to the desperation behind every performance of goodness. And while others chase approval, he would chase leverage. While others cling to old selves, he would vanish and reappear as needed. While others stay silent to avoid offense, he would make noise with purpose. These 21 rules are not for the soft-hearted. They are not meant to be admired. They are meant to be used. Because in the end, power doesn't go to those who wait. It goes to those who take it, with calm eyes, steady hands, and no apologies. Machiavelli would not ask if you're ready. He would ask only one thing. Are you willing to play the game, or are you still hoping to win without ever making a move? The choice, as always, is yours.